I had a balance where I was in my life of, okay, now my career's taking off and these things are happening and I'm getting everything I want. And I'm like, hold on for a second. This awful thing just happened to you. And you need to be able to do both. Like, you can't just put this thing in a box and be like, that's back home, and then go
No.
out and tour and live. And that's kind of, what I did. I filmed Fool Us, and then I started traveling for shows, and then I backpacked Europe. And it was like I hadn't been home. And for me, it was this crazy world of, when I came home, it kind of reminded me, oh, you were this person before. You love somebody and they all of that. It was just a reminder. And for me, I had to be able to balance, this I'm Gabriella Lester, superhuman magician, going to take over the world on this great path to success, with here's young, vulnerable kid, teenager who's still growing up and going through life and handling all these things. And you got to be that person too. You can't just ride with the fact that your career is great and move on with that. You need to still work through all the other parts of you in your life. And these last 3 years of your life where you've just been a kid and you've just been young and you've just had this job and you've just been normal, you can't just ride this wave. You've got to be able to step away from the glory of the flashing lights and people that love you and life on the road, and be okay with being that normal person and processing those feelings. Otherwise, you just get addicted to one and forget the other, and that just consumes you and you lose the core version of who you are, I think.
Because it must be really difficult to have that upswinging, and then suddenly, like, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the grief? How do you let it out? Because we're not taught how to deal with loss, with grief, how to deal with like suicidal thoughts, negativity, and a lot of kids nowadays, they look at like celebrities because they don't know who they are as a person, so they try to mimic friends and celebrities and stuff. And did you find like things like journaling? Did you use kind of just needing to get away to kind of get your thoughts together? How did you deal with all that raw emotion that was going in with you at the time?
I think, yeah, it was a mixture of what I'm fortunate enough to call healthy vices, which is writing and journaling and talking and listening to music. I was really fortunate enough that I never dove down a path of, substance abuse or different vices in any form. For me, I just found things that were hard, but they worked, and they took longer, but they worked. So it was a lot of just journaling and writing. And I've always had the approach, when I go through something in life, I want to talk about it as much as I can. I want to dive into those feelings as much as I can. Like, I never want to just put it in a box and let it be this bad thing. I want to unpack it as much as I possibly can when it happens, so I become okay with it and I can talk about it, and nothing bad that happens to me can ever consume me. So I think it was finding as many ways as I possibly could to feel the feelings when they had and ride out those waves. And there were moments. I mean, it was lost. Even though I was on this career high, there were still moments where I do a great show and then instinctively go to call this person that had been in my life for a long time, and then realize and
Yeah.
have those reminders of this loss and this grief that I had to work through. And, a lot of these highs were met with a punch to the face, of this hurt. So I just had to acknowledge that it was there and spend as much time as I needed, even if it put my career on hold, to work through those feelings until I was okay with it. And I feel like I'm in a good place with a lot of that now, and I have been for a while. And it's just because I I'm not in a rush.